Hi, I'm Greg Corombos. My guest at this time is Mike Hammond, Legislative Counsel at Gun Owners of America. We want to get his insights and analysis on how Virginia Democrats are trying to change the gun laws there. A flurry of bills have been introduced and voted on, and for the next few minutes, we'll examine what's been done thus far. And Mike, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Greg.
Well, we reached a critical point in the Virginia political calendar this week as we hit what's known as crossover day, meaning anything that's got a chance to be approved this year must have already passed in at least one chamber. So before we get into the analysis of what the Democrats are doing, let's chronicle what has passed in at least one chamber. By my count, which I admit is a rough count, we have universal background checks, red flag laws, limits on magazines and suppressors, banning what gun control advocates call assault weapons appears less certain. So is that pretty much the list, or did I miss some stuff here?
Well, there are a few more things. One gun a month, basically. Right. If you have a large gun collection and it turns out one of your guns goes missing, you're in a whole lot of trouble. Incidentally, I don't think there's one police department in this whole area, Washington, D.C. or Maryland, that hasn't had points in which large numbers of guns have been lost by the police. So they're trying to hold gun owners up to a standard that the police basically fail to comply with themselves.
Well, let's talk about the impact of these laws. Now, you and I have talked about these a lot, universal background checks, red flag laws, and so we can obviously get into that again. But one that we haven't talked about, I don't think, is limits on magazines and suppressors. If that becomes law and you can limit it to, I'm not sure whether they settled on 10 or 12 in Virginia.
I think it'll end up 10, but I could be wrong.
So what's the impact of that if it's limited to that?
Basically, magazines are a little more than metal boxes. So the impact of the entire package is that the entire gun control agenda, as advocated by the most ardent New York gun control activists, has been enacted in Virginia, or effectively enacted as soon as the two houses work out minor differences. Virginia has now become New York or California. Large categories of guns, perhaps guns owned by 1.5 million Virginians, have been made illegal, and they don't claim that they're coming to confiscate them at this moment, but we all know what's going to happen. It's the New Zealand two-step, whereby the next thing that happens, the next tragedy that comes on the national scene, the Governor Northam will begin confiscating guns, and he has the authority under the red flag laws to send SWAT teams around to gun owners' homes in the middle of the night, and he has the list as a result of universal background checks of gun owners' homes to which he needs to send the SWAT teams. So it's basically the entire New York gun control agenda brought to Virginia, and that's not coincidental. Incidentally, the guy who bought all of these Virginia elections was a former New York City mayor named Mike Bloomberg, and he's been trying to entrap Virginia, North Carolina, a whole lot of states other than New York for virtually his entire political career. And now he's spent millions and millions of dollars in order to buy the Virginia legislature. And now that he has, he's enacting his agenda right here in Virginia.
Well, you mentioned Bloomberg. He's obviously a Democratic presidential candidate as well. He hasn't been on the ballot in any of the states that have voted yet, but he will be soon, and he's obviously spending really hundreds of millions of dollars already of his own fortune on trying to get some momentum in this campaign, and it appears to be working so far. Virginia, where you are, and I am, votes as part of Super Tuesday on the Democratic side on March 3rd, and I understand that Gun Owners of America is not going to stay quiet as we get closer to that election day.
No, it becomes clear that his strategy, he hasn't been on the ballot anywhere up until this point, not going to be on the ballot in Nevada or South Carolina either. His strategy is to spend a good portion of his $55 billion in order to buy our constitutional rights and to buy America. And, given what his efforts in Virginia have already produced, I think that Gun Owners of America understands that this is pretty much Armageddon for us. If Bloomberg spends $2 billion and ends up buying the White House, because, for instance, he pays first-time staffers a starting salary of $70,000 and provides their housing. If he's able to use his $55 billion in order to buy our Constitution, then I think it's game over for us. We will be in the same situations we've been in Virginia over the last couple of months, in which we'll be struggling ineffectually to stop a result which is preordained. To the extent we're going to be able to stop Bloomberg, we're going to have to do it in the primary process and are probably going to have to do it in the next 2 weeks. So, our slogan is going to be, America is not for sale. This guy cannot come in with his $55 billion, not engage in debates, not put his name on the ballot in retail politics states, and still expect that he can use his money to buy our republic.
So, Mike, it's a Democratic primary, and if you spend time, and I don't know how much money, telling people this guy's going to take away your Second Amendment rights, or he's part of a massive gun control agenda that's hitting this state right now, a lot of the people voting in this primary are probably okay with that. So how do you tailor your message to Democratic voters?
You tailor your message to the audience that you're trying to reach at the moment. And our message, again, is America is not for sale. And amazingly, there are some liberals, there are some moderates, there are a lot of Democrats who believe that, who don't like the notion of a guy coming in with $55 billion and buying up all of our rights. If you lived in New York over the last 20 years, and I went to law school in New York, but I didn't live there over the last 20 years. But I can tell you, Bloomberg basically thinks that he has the capacity to control your life, control what size soft drink you can drink, to basically grab you off the street, slam you against the wall, and frisk you based on not probable cause, not reasonable cause, not anything except you're the wrong person in the wrong place. So I think that both liberals and conservatives, both moderates and immoderates, both Democrats and Republicans may have problems with a guy who has an agenda which consists of, I know better what's good for you than you do.
Mike, let's end on what I believe is a more optimistic note for your side of this debate, and that's that even if you pass laws, somebody's got to enforce those. And as you well know, we've got well over 100 jurisdictions, from county sheriffs to town mayors and police chiefs and so forth, all across big swaths of Virginia saying, look, if these laws that come out of Richmond look like they're unconstitutional to us, we are prepared to not enforce them. So what's the impact of that? And do you think that'll actually happen?
In Virginia, there are 91 out of 96 counties that pass sanctuary ordinances along lines which I've drafted and provided them. And in addition, every state in which you have a large city which is trying to hand gun control to a largely rural state, you have these sanctuary ordinances and resolutions which are being passed from New York all the way to Oregon, Washington, and Nevada. So it's going to be interesting. The governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, has threatened to basically call out the militia to invade rural counties in this state. We'll see. We'll see whether he has the ability to do that and exactly how people respond to that. I'm guessing that the more autocratic he gets, the more likely it's going to be that we're going to oust his party in the off-year elections in 2 years from now.
Mike, a lot to watch, both in Richmond as well as on the national campaign stage. We'll see what the impact of your efforts are on the Democratic primary scheduled for Super Tuesday on March 3rd, and we'll obviously be in touch as the debate goes forward. Thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you, Greg.
You bet. Mike Hammond, Legislative Counsel at Gun Owners of America. I'm Greg Corombos reporting for Radio America.